Well, this just be really just a nice, conversation because there's an old saying, right? That I think I said this in Bill's film. Talking about the different generations can start a fight in an empty bar room, if you get on the wrong road. But it's just interesting. Just a little background on me. I'm a longtime history teacher, football coach, all those types of things. But I now work with Daneli Partners, which is a leadership group, and we work on achievement, leadership, and teamwork. And one of the biggest challenges we're seeing in the workplaces is multi-generational issues, misunderstanding people based on that, or people making deductive beliefs on individuals based just on on which generation they come from. Sometimes a little truth to it. This is what makes it all a little bit, can be conflicting. So, looking at it, I just want to talk about the generations and some of the characteristics. But I like to start with this just to kind of know our room here a little bit. So everybody's got to play along with me. And this one, a small group, it's going to be a nice discussion because I think we're in a pretty good situation generationally in here, actually.
You were born in 96. Okay, I'm born in 56.
So,
I got 40 years.
Right, exactly. So you're just past millennial. You're on the closest to the pin. I'm closest to the pin on the Boomer X. I'm X, we're X, millennial, Boomer. However, I like to do this just to kind of get a feel for the room. Raise your hand and talk to people wherever you go. Grocery stores, things like that. We're be like, no, look at it. No. This like.
I lived in New York City for 8 years, so you talk to people, you may know that.
I got it. Okay, so it got knocked out of you. All right. See, my family, and Janine knows this, Pam knows this all too well. We're the masters of the 45-minute goodbye. All right, so we're not. Thanksgiving ends. It ain't over. All right, we're going to be standing by the car. My youngest is in the back, just going, "What are you doing?" Smacking their head in the back, and which is interesting because it's it's funny because when that happens, just kind of as a person, I gotta watch myself because it's pretty obvious when I'm not talking to somebody, right? Or sometimes people come up to you and say, "Hey, what's the matter?" Like, dude, just sit, right? Because people expect Janine to be on. I said, Janine, it's game time. It's time for us to speak, and people tend to be a little bit quiet. Sometimes you gotta be careful, but I don't think you have to be careful. But sometimes people will put a story on it. If you don't give them a story, they'll give you one. And that's what I worry about with this generation stuff. Sometimes if we don't say, "Hey, look, let me tell you a little bit," or if we can actually get people together. I just came out a wedding, AC got married, and it was just great seeing all the generations together. And I was thinking about that. We're the organized people. Organized, color-coded. Raise your hand if you're organized. We're the people. Yeah, we're people organized in their own special way. Let's go. Right, that's us. Right there. We're the don't touch it. I know where it is. All right, that's my go-to thing on this. We're the list people. A list of things to do, maybe on the weekend. Your list?
I've been carrying lists in my head for years, and I'm getting a little too old to do that.
So you're on the list of stuff?
I'm forgetting things.
See, I'm a cross.
My list is on my phone. My husband's list is on my notepad.
Does he cross out? Has he ever done one of these? You get later in the day, and you go, "Hey, wait a minute, this morning." You do one of those? Ask him. I do that. It's embarrassing. I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win Tuesday. All right? So there's that competitive thing. This one I'm almost afraid to ask. Who likes to race people while they're driving? Do you really? Okay. You play offense or defense? Are you trying to pass people or just nobody gets by them?
I'm trying to pass.
Are you trying
And
to
I would like you to please get yourself over. The left lane is for passing. It's not for you to be hanging out, have a party. Get over. I will pass you, then I'm getting right over in front of you. I'm not going to sit over there either. But why you have to sit there, I don't know.
Well, you got a place to go. Anybody race the GPS?
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I can knock that thing down. All right, it's that fun. And where do people like to ask a lot of questions? Beautiful. There are people. There's a. Oh, your journal's on. That's fine. Okay. There's a lot of people who won't ask questions. Period. It's just like, So do you get asked to ask questions a lot? People come to you. Hey, can you ask them? Blah 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 blah. I'm like, you go up and ask them. Does that help you, friend? A lot of question askers get asked. Oh, I just like people, when you're in charge, by the way, just,
If I
Sure.
may,
Yeah.
there's another form of that. Could you tell him it really bothers me when?
oh, yeah. Yeah, and then you're the ones who, you're the
I'm
one,
the bad
you're
guy.
the bad, bringing the bad news.
Yeah, but
So-
you're able to do it, Janine, I know you can.
So these are the Gallup questions, that they go with them, Gallup certified coach, and I like these just to get a feel for the room, because it brings out the fun, the fact that we're different. And regardless of generation, you're gonna get different, you're gonna get almost a 50-50 down there with a few people like this who always, I love how they always explain, here's what's supposed to happen here, we're supposed to just move over, there are rules here, we live in a society. And so can we name the generations? So the point is, I want to start with this. When we talk about generations, one thing I would caution, and I'm always starting with myself, is while there are some truths of generations and some characteristics that might trend, people are different. People are different. People have different ways of approaching life. Just on these goofy little questions that I asked here at the beginning, that can actually happen. So it's one data point. It's just one area where you say, okay, take this into consideration when you're meeting people, that they're more than just their generation, and certainly be cautious, myself, of saying that whole group is like this, that whole group is like this. So that's the point. So while we're talking about it, how are we doing? Can we name the generations? Yeah.
Boomers, 46 to 64.
Yep.
Followed by millennials. No, Generation X, then millennials,
See, we
sorry.
get skipped over. This
Thank
is
you.
the stuff that happens to us.
Okay, you
Right.
can leave.
Like I said, my generation, by the way, when I turned 18, the drinking age turned 19. When I turned 19, it turned 21. All right? You are right there. Hey, how about calling us children? And they reinstated the draft registration at the same time. And they raised the drinking. We're like, this doesn't seem fair. And they started voting down budgets. I'm sorry, this sort of subject. Keep going, Janine. You got X. You got.
I'm sorry, so Generation X takes us to 46 to, no, because, well, hello.
Hi.
You were
Sorry.
Aphrodite a
Not
moment
you,
ago.
Sally.
Yes, I was Aphrodite.
We're gonna have to introduce you, so we know we have 40 years in this room. He's 28 and I'm 68.
He's 28?
Yeah, I'm a boomer. We're just talking about
I'm a boomer as well, I'm 76.
Okay, cool. All right.
X millennial. So what everybody else got one? So we go.
I got one.
What do you got?
So before the boomers was the silent generation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The total shut up generation. Which is just kind of fun.
No, the pre-boomers, like the.
Oh, I see.
Like
Oh.
the 10 to the 30s.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're talking
No,
about
yeah.
Is that the silent?
They call it, I call it the greatest, I go with the Brokaw name, which I'll add there with the greatest generation, which Coach was a part of. And, that whole generation was
one
really
that served
something.
in World War II
Yeah.
or did all of the stuff to support that.
Right, and then my father's generation believes they did. Sorry, I should have had him here. But no, very good. So I have them there. And then we go boomers, X, then we got the millennials, which is Y, and then Gen Z.
And then Gen Alpha.
Yeah, they call them alpha. The new kids are like, who really aren't loving that. So just showing this, and I'll take you through some characteristics. And I really want to do more on the discussion realm. All right, we got some good minds in this room, and it's a small room, so it might as well be fun. But I'll show you some things. The greatest generation, I use the Brokaw name because of the book. The traditionalist is often what it's called, like my parents' generation. And you can see some changes. I'm going to go more in depth in a sec. The baby boomers that we've talked about.
I'm sorry, you went too fast. I couldn't read it all.
I'm going to go deeper dive in about
Thank
a
you,
minute.
got it. I'm
But
full.
this, I will take you
Okay,
through this.
thank
I just want to get
Got
that.
it.
So X, that's us 65 to 80. Then the millennials who are really interesting. I think the whole thing needs to be discussed. And the older you get, the more you see the historical perspective. Not about myself. And then Z, a nice job on that, by the way. 97 to 20, and I'm going to leave the elves out for that. What's unique for me is I remember certainly many people that were very dear to me in the greatest generation and the oldest generation, certainly the boomers, and I taught all the other generations. So I had, in addition to studying it and being interested in it, hearing people say things, I'm like, So even Alpha, I'll throw one thing out for Alpha. I'll say something about the kids in school now. I think they're probably nicer than we were. In general, they trend, yeah, they really are. They really look out for each other. I don't think they're as friendly, if that makes sense. They keep to themselves or their small groups of friends, but they don't do outreach. But the stuff that, like, especially when they start bringing up all the anti-bullying laws, kids were saying, is there something happening I'm not aware of? Right? You probably heard that at home too. Like, we're trying to fix the stuff that was happening before. That's just kind of an observation from a teacher. Now we're talking about, again, thousands of people in a building, so you're always going to have some problem.
Can I add something to that? They're more profane than we were. We did not use the F word.
That's
10
right.
years ago, I said to my brother, I can't believe how my nephew's speaking. And he said, he's a good kid.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
a good kid.
That's right.
Everybody uses that word. Everybody uses it. It's an adjective, it's an adverb, it's whatever. It's a
It makes
noun.
us crazy.
Yeah.
When I was
Same.
in Florida, I was going to be a substitute teacher down there. We lived there for 10 years in West Palm Beach. And the people said to me, Maria, those little first graders are going to say the F word, and they're so nasty. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. And I didn't so after all. But.
Yeah, no, and let's do some perspective on this. So we'll start with the traditionalists, if you would, which is, and again, a lot of these generations get named after the fact, but to the point here, a lot of this rubbed off on us. So my parents, it's dependable, straight. But this is what they want to be known by. This is what they're trying. We're dependable, we're straightforward, we're tactful, which was just brought up. Loyal. You don't just bounce around. My father, lives in Breeze, seems like what his friends were. There was. I'm not saying we don't do that. I'm saying that was just the way it was. You have this life where you have to, what you look like really matters, and they're shaped by some real big events that, like I was joking before, that they went through, but they didn't really go through, if you would. Like they did, but they don't really remember. My father was born in 37, so maybe I put too much on him, but the Depression, certainly those born in 25 remember it. World War II was, one of the most impactful things that ever happened on this planet. But they were shaped by radio and film. Reality was somehow created by that, even more than literature for most. All right, so the John Wayne version of what World War II looked like. The radio broadcast, which can be very haunting. They like to tell the stories about listening to the Rose Bowl parade, thinking out west on the radio. The person's just describing it. It's still pretty cool, people listening to baseball games. So they're affected by that, but they're motivated by it. Like I said at the beginning, this is not even suggesting true of every single person in the generation. We can all adopt that ground rule, but it's not surprising, though, is it? This. Motivated by respect. This is from Purdue research, by the way. Respect, recognition, providing long-term value to a company, because the company's going to be there for me. I'm going to be there for the company. The school's going to be there for me. I'm never retired. I didn't go to another school. Nobody went to another school. I felt weird when I went to another school. I did. It was
Particularly the one you chose.
Let's go. JDFM was a big rival. People are really mad at me about that. Communication style, personal touch, proper etiquette, proper language, handwritten notes instead of email, right? For obvious reasons. But I still remember my friend's handwriting. We used to kind of write that back and forth. And the sad thing that happens traditionally, I think, is sometimes we get rid of things that I don't know that we really want to get rid of. Or here's something new, we never replaced it. Now email has its place, but there's something about that nice handwritten note. You don't just see as many holiday cards as you used to, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody prints something, you're like, okay. Expensive, right? But the worldview was obedience over individuals because they had to stick together. Age equals seniority. So as you move up, I don't care if the smartest person in the room is younger. The age is the deal. Advancing through the hierarchy, because you will get your turn, was the notion. All right, you will get your turn. So people kind of gracefully left the stage, and sometimes the stage left them. So that's I don't think that's a big surprise to people in here. Now, you're the boomers, life expectancy increases. Now it's time to live deluxe, changing workplace. Collaborative, but a little bit adverse to change, which is ironic because there's great political people during that time. This is Purdue, this isn't Paul, all right? But optimistic, competitive, workaholic, team-oriented. My job reflects who I am, all right? That is, my value comes from, and respect comes from the work I've done, and how hard I work, and the commitment that I put to things. And they were shaped by the things that Janine talked about. I mean, you ran the table, Janine.
JFK, I was 7, MLK and RFK, I was 11.
Right, and that led to poor actors in politics and a time where the press would make it clear. Where some of the stuff that went on in the 30s, we're just not going to print this. And so therefore people have this false belief that in the old days everybody was upright.
If you go back,
Boy,
Ross Tweed bought up every newspaper except the New York Times. They were the only ones who would publish against him, and that made the New York Times a name.
Because they stood up to the boss. And so it's really interesting, the context in which you come in, and we are products of our time. We'd be different if we were born at different times. At some level, just fantastic, all right? But these were horrible things, and television played an incredible role that it wouldn't have played for the generation prior. But they're motivated by company loyalty, teamwork, and duty. That's it. A lot of people criticize this generation sometimes for their protests against the obedience of, especially the war. But at the same time, this could go on and on and on, this phase, but I think anybody who was speaking really believed that they were trying to do the right thing. I don't think it was just picking this stuff up, but that still held on from the prior generation. Jump in, Gene. That was just people talking.
I'm visiting Dr. Weiskopf tomorrow. Well, Weiskopf's dad, he's in Steely Dan. Anyway, the dad is 95. I babysat for the Weiskopfs while he and his wife canvassed the neighborhood, putting anti-Vietnam leaflets in people's hands and talking about how horrible the war was. He was a doctor. He was not a baby boomer. He was born. Again, he'll be 95.
And that went across all generations, which people forget. But the communication style, the boomers, whoever the fish, I'll call you face to face, but I'm going to talk. We're going to talk. All right, we're going to, and that's.
It's direct. And
the world view is you got to pay your dues, and then sacrifice leads to success. Not success now. Because that older generation, now it's our turn. What's the thing? And here's some statistics that are just where we're at right now. Baby boomers are expected or already working past 70 and do not plan to retire, 49%. And this leads to some issues, all right? Because if people aren't retiring, the people who paid their dues, there's a logjam for who's next. And so we've seen this gap in leadership that's taking place, meaning people having opportunities to have those businesses. It's going to have a big impact on Generation X, if you'll see, and their mentality, all right, and their mentality. So Gen X, independent, well-educated, it's the post-loyalty. This is really what you talk about with the hedge funds in the 80s. All of a sudden, no more pensions. All of a sudden, people are getting laid off. All of a sudden, businesses are leaving the town. And people are saying to the generation, why aren't you guys loyal? They're not loyal. I didn't have the opportunities that
the Amazon warehouse will chew you up.
Will chew you up. Walmart, those types of things internally and externally. And so now you have a skeptical generation, independent, because it became pretty clear that by choice, hey, isn't it great we all get to work in the workforce if we choose to? Prior generation X, you have to. to have the same standard of living. So we probably have more people working in this country than we ever had before. I mean, out of the home. I really want to make that right. All right, working out of the home. Just so what was this generation shaped by the AIDS epidemic, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the dot-com boom that brought you here, the boom and subsequent fall. But the Berlin Wall thing was really big for us because I remember a friend of mine saying, you know, we were at the Shacky Patch. Do you know what I'm talking about in Oswego? It's a well-known gym, all right? But we all ran there because we just didn't have cable, all right? So it was like we heard that this was going down, this was happening in the middle of the night. People were calling, we're all just standing there watching this thing. And a friend of mine said, does this mean that, how naive was I? Does this mean that war is over? I think so. So shut quiet. Good friend of mine, like I thought so, because I thought that'll be done, and then we'll get the Middle East sorted out, all these things that happened, and it didn't happen that way. And it led to, and if you listen to the music, just kind of the music of the late 80s is so happy you can't listen to it. Walking on Sunshine and all those, you know, end of the world, as you know, it's like because they thought the thing was done, and then right, don't worry, be happy. Then early 90s, what do you have? Early 90s, you have grunge. You know, you have rap coming out saying, hey, you should listen to us in the inner city because, especially LA, and that's Rodney King, and then all those things happen. Yeah, lose my religion, all those things. You're like, dang it, we're not going to get out of this thing, and that's where I think the skepticism comes from. And I don't want to get too stuck in this, but you get motivated by diversity. As more people went to college, the more diversity took place because of the civil rights movement. We were living the results of that, and realized that there were still problems, obviously. But so you see, kind of, first people start talking about work-life balance if you can have it, because it seemed to exist for the old generation. They got to worry about yourself, your own interest as opposed to the company's interest, because that person's never going to leave. And so now I got to figure out a way to do it. Communication style, yeah, we'll do whatever we got. You know, we're just as bad as the kids on the phones. All right, just start. I love to feel these kids are not like hey, you're doing the same thing.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
the personal versus professional interest, my generation, the baby boomers, if you will,
Yep.
was called the me generation. We were catered to in ways that previous ones were not. My father never played a sport where his parents were there.
Right.
We had big gyms and parents and grandparents and whatever came, and we were catered to. Teenagers had their own fashions. It was different.
And I think we're also ignoring the numbers. I mean, the baby boom is literally that, a boom. So this is a decrease, and they think they went too far. And so for our generation, we started getting school budgets voted down. Sister no circus didn't. Well, Sister no circus became Sister no circus, and they started cutting sports and all these things were like
Music and art.
yeah, well, what the heck is this all about? You know, and that had happened. So the worldview is facing diversity, quick to move if their employer fails to meet their needs. This is the part where it's like, I got to get out of here. Resistant to change at work if it affects their personal lives. I think this is true. And the stats that 55% of startups, a lot of just want a business for themselves. Because I've never going to be in charge. So I've never opened my own business. And it speaks to that. And it's the highest percentage of startups is Gen Z. So they kind of had a good time too. When you start getting into, and they didn't do this while they were born, of course, they did this in the 90s. And then by 28, Gen Xers were outnumbered the baby boomers. I hope that's not true. I was doing the math, I don't want to do the math. All right. The millennials. You're up, Lauren. All right, here we go. You fell out of the curve on this one. You're right closest to the pin. So my son Will is the same age. My uncle, who's 9 years old, Catholic priest, loves baseball, and he texted me out of the blue. He's like, "How old is Will?" You know, our son. I'm like, 27. I'm just trying to figure out what these guys look, because he couldn't believe this picture was 26 years old. This was point. So yeah, Will's up the line throwing. I think you had to walk that one off. This is the thing that I think gets underreported or felt by perhaps older generations and maybe even younger generations. The first big traumatic things that happened, JFK, MLK, Watergate. You just don't think anything after that is as big because you took the punch and you get used to it. I'm not saying we're all affected by this, but Columbine changed everything in education. It turned schools into prisons. It made kids afraid. It
That's 98,
99.
99.
And I know that because that was my last year to Oswego. It's the only reason I know it. So 9/11, I don't think we have to go into that, but it was here, and it was and everybody saw it, and the kids saw it. All right, and you couldn't help but see it. And then people started getting confused, like, man, that looked like a movie. No, it didn't. That was real. We used to say that movie looked real. That was the first time I heard people saying it looked like a movie. You know, motivated by responsibility, the quality of their manager. So most millennials will leave because of the people in charge, not the business, not the money. Yeah, and you just got shut out. She said, "I'm out of here." I said, no, I'm sorry. Look, I'm kidding. She did do that. I'm sorry. That's funny to me. All right. But communication style, I'm going to avoid talking at all costs. All right. This is my daughter Mary. When I make her, I call her sometimes. She's like, "Oh, what?" Like, you go, man. I'm like, I want to talk to you. And she's fine. You know, we got to work on that with the students because anything you think you can say, anything you say, you can write, anything you write can be read. We got to get kids to be able to work. We actually go into schools, and I think you get a kick out of this. I don't know. I was thinking that you would like this, but we basically set up the kids in a square, you know, and they have to go around and shake their hands and tell about themselves for 1 minute. Boom, go to the next one. Boom, go to the next one. Just to practice it. But for interviews, we're talking about interviews, personal statements, things like that. But after a while, they start laughing again. There's just not as much practice. There's a lot of schools, 3 schools we work with, that they do not allow cell phones in the schools. And they were ready for World War III. And all 3, separate from each other, kids love it. It was almost like, it just takes the pressure off. I thought that was interesting. But so you challenge growth development. I want a fun work life and work-life balance. I've worked my tail off in school. I want to have some fun at some point. All right. But I'm going to leave if they don't like change. We're just stuck in the mud. I'm out. I'm going to leave. You don't care about me. I don't care about you. Let's go. You know, if you do care about me, I'm going to go in the jaws of hell for you. And I think that's really so. Statistically, you know, this is their time, and I would say to the millennials, all right, and closest to the pen. But I think it's really important to realize that as people start to retire or really cut back on be emeritus, if you would, you know, just kind of be in charge, there's going to be a time to come up because it's not going to be us. It's not going to be the X's. We have the managerial positions. We're not really in charge of things. The millennials are really already shaping this world.
Before you
And
move
are
on.
going to. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you finish, but I don't want you to leave this board.
Yeah.
You're
Go.
done.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so those bottom 2, those are the people who voted for Bernie Sanders because they couldn't afford to enter into their own place, their own apartment, their own house, their own whatever that their parents had done by the time they were that age.
Right, because of cost.
Your parents owned a home? Or
Between
had at
25
least
and
1 or 2
34,
kids?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Had one of them at least was employed and could pay for everything.
And had some job security.
That's right. And so you take away that, and you take away, you add the student loans, which the credit card crisis of which was intentional, which blew us up in Generation X. You're probably smarter than I was, and now, okay. Every one of us touched the stove to some extent. Some people went crazier than others. Then they forgive them. It's like, wait a minute, I paid my debt. And this living at home, and then they get criticized for it as if there's a lack of work ethic in their work. Or the parents get criticized, why you let them live at home in your basement? It's like, why wouldn't I? You know, you can pitch at me, the housing costs, car costs, all those things and I think that's good evidence of why there'd be a shift to the far left from the millennials who you're hearing. This is the only generation where it's pretty 50-50, Democrat, Republican, throughout the generations. It's a side story. Not here so much. Not here so much. It leads more left. But it's only about 55%. You know, that's my whole point. It's not like you can say this is exactly what's happening. It's really interesting to see it in the sense, to me anyway. But this gets left out as an incredibly devastating change in our society. I mean, I'll just never forget it, you know, and being in the classroom with the students, just knowing that things are not going to be the same. I mean, I know that day, just because the subject I teach, and I mean, we had a big game coming up, and it's like, we're playing, you know, and he goes, what are we doing? We're not practicing. I'm like, I don't know if there's going to be a game. I don't know if I want a game. All right, I said, I don't think you understand what's happening here. I remember saying this to the young people who were, you know, who I was talking to when we were in class and those types of things. The world was less safe, and you have to remember, or just inform us yourself, that we were at war until President Biden became president. Okay, we were in Afghanistan full time, and we went to Iraq in '93. And a lot of people went to war, but everybody else got to go along with their lives. And so that's why 9/11 never felt like it was over. As long as we were at war, it was still going. We had this constant state of alarm that felt very Cold War-ish.
The Brits criticized us for that. They all had to get underneath in a bomb shelter during World War II. But when it was over, they got back to their lives.
That's right.
And didn't keep singing World War II, World War II. Well, we wouldn't let go of it.
We kept looking, and it almost like a badge of honor. And it was really, it's never been discussed as adults of what in the world went down. And that's where you start seeing the politics really become binary. You're either this or you're that. And that's what happens with generations. If you're in this generation, you're all these things. If you're not, you're all these things. When it's just me up here, and every one of you could do the same. I'm Paul Muench, I'm a football coach. That's a different view of me. Paul Muench of Generation X is different. Paul Muench, I taught AP World History. Paul Muench, I'm the president of Daneli Partners. I'm son. Janine babysat me. You know, those types of things. Every one of them, they're all me. And we have all these things.
And we saw each other at the Hard Rock in New York when he was in college.
That was
What
my
a surprise that
finest
was.
That was my finest hour. My friend got mad. He said, "No, we can all beat up on Z. You stuck in the Z land. You're the captain of the Z. All right." But this is okay.
Are you born in '96?
Right. So you're with Mary and Will.
He's calling him on the pin.
On the pen, yeah. So this idea here, it's global, it's entrepreneurial, it's progressive, less focused. I did a deeper dive in that, meaning the world's changing at a rate that is just unbelievable. I better not get stuck in the mud, all right? And so they're more open. But they're shaped by their whole life being after 9/11 and you know, that they remember. I mean, it's incredible to think none of those kids in high school right now were alive at 9/11. They weren't even alive. You have to teach it like you're teaching World War II. It's like when I was in school, Pam, they'd start talking about, you know, the Vietnam War as if we knew what the heck happened. Like I was 3, 68. Like you have to teach that to me as if it was, but they didn't. They were like, you guys remember? We're going, I don't remember.
I remember eating dinner and having the Vietnam War coverage on the TV.
That I remember. I remember when they came home and I didn't know we were really at war. I remember I was right if you go 72, 73 when people started back to Vietnamization. So it stays with you. But this generation, and you can see a lot of these great things were passed down. You know, I think some of the great things on this list, hats off to it. We can clean up their act a little bit. But the diversity, personalization, individuality, creativity being a key factor.
Which is why you gotta go up a step to access to technology from a young age. And that's why we had to hire these people, because they could do the stuff technically that we could not.
They invented language.
Thank you. That too.
Right.
So they had a place and they were like, you know what? I don't like this job and I'm going over there because they need me just as bad as you do and they're gonna pay me more. I mean, there was just a whole.
It's unreal. I mean, it really is. And it's great. It's great. If we get stuck with just one generation, we're leaving talent off the table. We're missing opportunities here. But you got it. Social media, text, IMs, it doesn't come without a price tag on this stuff. But the worldview, self-identifying as digital device addicts. They said, we're all addicts. But I'm sorry, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of ages who were pretty rough on this stuff. but they want that independence and individuality. There's really a logjam of leadership anyway. They prefer to work with millennial managers who can speak to it. These are generalizations. But they're innovative coworkers and they love new technology. If something's new, they're in, where I'm like, oh, dang it, I just learned the last thing.
I gotta get another password.
Oh. And they're like, just give me, boom, we're done. You know, it's like, but the seniors want companies where they can learn, where they can advance their careers. No employers that should subsidize and pay for direct training of students.
With good reason.
Yeah, and this makes sense, doesn't it? But sometimes if learning is finding out what you already know, but putting it on it. But I think what happens is we lose track of why the people act the way they act. The big issue, let me rephrase, what we're seeing, this is Daneli working with all the different businesses, especially the tech people, Wolfspeed, Dan Foss, we hope Micron, but this idea that we better all figure out how to work together because you need the experience of people who, that experience that matters, right? It matters. But you also have some innovative ideas and you can mix it all together. The best teams don't have the most well-rounded leaders. They have the most well-rounded teams. Okay? So the idea is that you have different segments of society that can all bring something to the table and if they're on the same cause. And they are, the one loyalty that remains throughout is loyalty to good leadership. And that's the one thing but it's the one that I notice the most throughout. Maybe it's the lens that we teach leadership development. And that doesn't matter age. If the person's good, they're good. It is difficult, a challenge sometimes to lead people who are older than you, but there's a way to do it. If you got to show them respect and all those types of things. I thought you might find this interesting. So this is just marriage. There's one thing I noticed in there. I don't know if you can see it.
It happened during the war.
Yeah. Which makes sense. Right. Both.
Unless you married him by proxy, good
Yeah.
for you guy.
You tried to get married before World War II started. People got married after Gulf of Tonkin to avoid, the draft. I mean, that was if you were married, you weren't going. So people were just getting married right out of high school.
If you were a farmer, you were exempt. So if you married into a farm family, you'd become exempt.
Right. And people were marrying friends. Sometimes they were going, but and it does lead to, a spike in divorce later, when a lot of those weddings were for different reasons. All right. And there's other reasons, but that's one that sometimes gets under brought up. And then I think we all just said the same thing. The reason for the later marriage is it's really financial. And how do we both have to work, and how do we both get fulfilling work, and how do we pick where we're going to live?
If you can't look a woman in the eye, how are you going to marry her? Come on.
Right.
That's part of it too, is the kids aren't as socialized as we were.
Right.
And so there are a whole lot of, they call them incels. Unintentionally celibate.
Involuntary.
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 It's involuntary.
Yeah, involuntary, thank you.
We need to fix that at the school level. We're working on it, all right? I'm just saying from a Daneli standpoint, we get to be the funny and uncle to come in as opposed, but I always try to have that in school, and we're paying an enormous price on it. I just wanted to show you, I think, I want to hit this other one first. Okay. What do you think is going to happen on this one? And then we'll just open the floor here. So what we're dealing with is engagement. This is at work. Engaged at work, meaning great attendance.
Right.
They're into the fight, the whole, they're really on board. This is Gallup's data. And I'm, 22. Burnout, stress by generation.
I think baby boomers have got it figured out, so they're going to do well on each of the positives. Be engaged, where they're going to be more resilient to being burned out or stressed.
Yeah, but we're not going to see much of the boomers as a prediction.
I can speak more for probably my generation.
Yeah.
About the others.
What do you think yours is going to be?
It's hard to say across the board because it depends on your line of work.
Totally agree.
you know, what you have going on in the rest of your life, you know, so there are a lot of factors involved with it, as far as it's stress or feeling burned out.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because X and boomers tend to talk about their work as the source of these things, where the younger generations think, well, what's that thing called? Oh yeah, their lives. You know, and what's happening there. Predictions, Lauren? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say by engagement, you mean like engagement.
At work. This is a work thing. Yeah, this is a work thing. No, I beg your pardon. Yeah, I said, this one I took from we were talking in the workplace, so.
I think older millennials, Gen Z and younger millennials will have higher levels of being burnt out and stress with the combination of the tech boom, student loan payments, and the logjam that you mentioned of there's
Yeah.
no work.
There's no- yeah.
People aren't retiring.
Or I'm gonna stay, or I'm gonna stay. Let's see what we got. Okay? So the boomers, 40% of the stress, 18% burned out, which is not a big number. 33% are really engaged. Engaged is a high mark, okay? It's like you're sprinting to work, all right? That's what they mean by that, just so you. Generation X, the
Now becoming sandwich generation.
yes, 27% burned out, 32%
Kids
engaged.
do-
Older millennials, if you would, the 63%, then you 34% are burned out, 32% engaged. And then, not
Engaged
so-
isn't that much different from one to one.
that's the thing.
One to the other.
So this idea that the real, there's nobody in these younger generations that are bringing it. The data doesn't sell. I found that surprising.
Okay,
I-
can
I-
I tell
I-
an anecdote that's gonna make my grandfather look bad?
Yeah.
So, at the Janesville quarry, the work ethic was no different than the one they described today about, well, let's see how little we can do and still stay employed.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about
They're not gonna do it.
1930s, 40s, 50s. These guys were like, okay, we know what we can do and not get fired.
Yeah, the
It's
candle
not
company
new.
was, the candle company was
Yeah.
the same way. Don't kill the job. Don't kill the job.
But if
We
you-
work
if
too
you
hard, we
work-
want a
If you
job.
work too hard, somebody's gonna have to go, yeah.
Yeah, somebody's gonna have to go. So there was a reason behind it. But the stress thing, and I know that was one of the topics that was covered here, is taking all of that on the outside, plus being outnumbered. So when we did work, I think you might find this interesting, with a group called International Wire out of Camden. Incredible leadership team, and they talk about the younger people working there like they were doing fine and they're just gone. Well, something happened that they didn't know, and they're just boom out.
Wait, who didn't know? The boss didn't know?
The leadership, they're like, we had a young guy, kind of this kind of story. Young guy was banging away, and he had a bad day on the machine, the thing broke. It did there was a malfunction. I always tell him, don't worry about this and that, and then he was gone. Like, they ended up, one guy said, I drove from South, like, that anxiety, which is about the future and depression about the past, that anxiety, oh my God. The catastrophication that can happen, that might come from that idea that I'm living a reality show, starring me live on TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat every day. And that everybody's gonna see everything. And everybody's watching me. And when I wake up in the morning, here it comes, let's see what Paul does today. There are almost, I don't know about you, but there are no pictures of me in college, right? There's a few here and there. We know there's no evidence that happened.
There's no
Right.
evidence of
Thank-
what.
Yes, thank God. And these guys are putting, like, what are you doing? At the same time, there's this, and my father's the same way. I'm like, are you gonna be at this wedding? You're just gonna film this thing, Dad. You know what I'm saying? But that's part of his fun, and he knows how to do it. The point is, we're all different, but this worries me, and it is financial, and it does get ignored, and there is a housing crisis that gets ignored. There is a student debt crisis that was, anybody's looked at those acceptance letters where in the middle, they throw loans in there, and it's like, here's a grant, here's a loan, but hey, look, you made it. If you look at the bottom line, there are people who we've worked with at school that are very confused by what those actually mean. And that's sad,
Never
because
pay off the principal, that's what it means.
that's exactly what it means. It is. And then there's enough people feeding the narrative, well, I paid my loan. The person's 18 and you don't trust that person to go over and have a drink with dinner. I mean, come on. But nobody wants to speak on behalf of the other generations because we all think we're better than the others. I laugh about the high school kids. I always say that seniors in high school, they just want to be respected by the outside world. They do. All right, the research really pulls us. But the second they get out of high school, they're like, I hate those kids. You know, they make fun of them. Look at those guys. They're not like us, which is a rite of passage, you know, moving up. But I think that tells quite a tale. And from a millennial standpoint, and I'll just end with this last. I think this shows you that older generations being above millennials. So whether it's and then again, this is Gallup information. So here's why they take jobs: increases income. 67%. That's a 6-point increase. Greater work-life balance. 7% higher than. It's really important, that balance. We're supposed to live life at some point. The organization is diverse and inclusive. It's more important to millennials than the older generations. Accelerates my career development. 17-point increase. The older generations, to me, and even me, I trained old, I think, because I got the job at Oswego High School. I'm done. Now I feel like Forrest Gump. Now I don't have to worry about money anymore. And then I'll just do my job because I loved it. I didn't really think about it, which I'm not really proud of saying out loud like that. But then these other people are going, we get to see something. What are you talking about? They're talking about. Remote, of course, 34%. It's more important, but the greater cause. 33%. So there's a cause. There's like, if I can't move up the rank, I want the cause. I'm not just by money. And the organization has a great reputation. I don't really care about that. Before he said, I work for this, what's cool, kind of thing. So that's paints a picture, doesn't it? I'm Mr. History here. I can't help myself, but we can go into what to do about it. But I think for a discussion like this, it's more interesting in our own lives is how do we break through those barriers? Where do we get everybody together, short of a wedding and heaven help me a funeral? Where do we get them together? I think the library is probably more important than it's ever been in my life, because where else can people go? My kids loved coming here, and the students would come here to study, but they wanted to hang out, get a little snow top after. Hang on the hill. Just because they didn't have places where they could hang. There's no Arnold's from Happy Days, where they used to hang out. And I think that hurt the social skills that Janine was referencing.
They didn't want us hanging out. There was Dobie Gillis. They had a malt shop. Okay, there was no place with like tables and counters and chairs and whatever for us to hang out. Go to Mr. Donut, but they wanted you out of there with your donut. There was no place to sit. And there was no town square, if you will.
And when you said the me generation, I think societally, there were a lot of things that were done educationally for boomers.
Absolutely.
That were wonderful. School was wonderful. And then it just became the big fear, because it was basically the nation at risk. It was the whole fear of education. We're going to fall behind. The Japanese are going to take over the whole thing, and that's when we just started trying to do another tech revolution that they did in the 50s after Sputnik. And so it all became about standardized testing, and then it really became about standardized testing in the 2000s.
And then it got ugly because the politicians who watched Jerry Rubin and all these other well-educated kids leading the charge said, maybe education shouldn't be emphasized so much. It became much harder to be part of higher education. The money that was available that kept tuition low went away and got pushed elsewhere. So tuition costs went like this, and it wasn't as likely that.
You're absolutely right, and that's in this stuff. This is a course, okay, and I don't want to. This is a lifetime thing. But one of the things that happens in the United States, we've always fought our battle between equality. End with this, between equality and freedom. Okay, the more freedom you get, typically the more equality you get, the more equality you get, the less freedom you have. What you're trying to find is that good balance. You know, that, if you try to get that thing matched up, and what's happening now is freedom becomes in the way of doing whatever I want to do right now. And I don't know if that's, people can argue, I would even argue against myself on that thing, but that happens where now everything is about how do we maximize profits. And we're seeing it sadly in government, we're sadly seeing it in higher education, it's just almost unbelievable. And now in athletics, of course, it's just professional. I mean, it's the way it's happening, and people are looking, what do we do about this? And that's something where I think if we can get people on the same page, maybe we can move in the right direction.
There's a missing part of that three-legged stool. Responsibility is to mean something.
Sure.
Responsibility to your community, to your family, to whatever.
And shame. I mean, it goes back to shame. I mean, we would curse in front of, I mean, to this day, from an old screen. I mean, if I slipped up, you know, I would be horrified today. Like, I'd be horrified today. I'm gonna be 60 in March, you know what I mean? And so the rules have changed, and we are a teenage nation. You know, we're an adolescent nation. We're, you know, there's this old story that in China they say, I'm studying American history. What do you guys do the second week? I mean, we really haven't been around. You know, you teach that as I have, it goes backwards. But I think what the short end solution, and this is just my thoughts on it, the more we can get people together of different generations and get them to speak to each other and to work together, which would involve some free time, the things of that nature. I really think our society, it's always a positive experience. I've noticed we always did the Sunday dinners. We were blessed to have both Sue's parents and my parents in town. We did it, but friends of our children were asking if they could join this thing. We're deep down inside, like, oh, we're doing this again this week, you know, just busy and stuff. And I'm like, you know, I feel guilty for you thinking that, because it was a wonderful thing to have. But I don't think they have to be the same families, you know. But as fewer people are going to houses of worship, if you will, where are these multi-generational spaces? And usually when people have kind of stereotypes of different peoples when they don't come into contact with each other. So when they come into contact with each other, usually those things are dispelled and we all become better for having been in contact with each other. So that's my positive thing. I think they want it. And I think we really better figure this thing out as a society, because there's a lot of people who are having a rough time because the responsibility of older generations used to look out for younger generations, and that it's not happening as much as it used to from the research that I've done. So
Thank you, Paul.
that's it. We'll move this on. Thank you.
Okay, but I'm not done.